Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been floating around before. I know it's been a while. I'm really sorry about that. I've been really struggling to figure out precisely what to do with this channel because I'm a writer. For those of you who are new here, hi, I'm Vivian. I'm a writer. Because I'm a writer, a lot of the work that I do is really boring to just look at because it's just me sitting quietly at a laptop and writing. But there's a lot of other thought processes that go behind it, and I want to make sure that people are let into what it is that's happening and what it is that I'm doing. So what I've decided to do is to put up 2 new series on this channel. The first one is called Writer's Diaries. It's going to be a bit more of a traditional vlog style, and it'll probably be kind of short each time, and it'll capture just like a day in the life or a moment of what I'm doing, of what I can show you, which might be a lot of sitting at a computer, but it might be other things as well. You know, I'm going to be going to cons again soon for the last minute research stuff, so those kinds of things will probably be captured. So that's going to be appearing on this channel starting in just a couple of weeks. But then we also have this series, which is Fieldwork Reflections. I was thinking about the fact that some of my previous episodes that I've done on Fieldwork Reflections of my experience at MCM and MegaCon, I thought were actually quite good. I think that I was able to demonstrate a lot of the kinds of stuff that I'm thinking about in relation to the cosplay research project that I'm currently doing. So I thought I would keep doing that. So Fieldwork Reflections are going to be coming out once a month, but up until August, which is when the book is due into the publishers. And then maybe I'll either swap to something else, or when the next research project pops up, I'll start doing these again. So for those of you who are just hearing about this, I'm an anthropologist and I'm writing a book all about cosplay and the anthropology of cosplay. It's going to be published by Reaction Books. I have a link in the description of this video to a little bit more information on my website, incidentalmythology.com, in case you want to check that out. But let's focus instead on Fieldwork Reflection. In this series, I'm going to be focusing a lot on what people have told me. So I've been doing interviews with people both formally and informally. So some of them are sat down, recorded, you know, things like that. Some of them are just people that I have spoken to. Some people didn't want to be recorded. Some people were just people that I just chatted to while I was in the moment of being at cons or something like that. But basically in this video, and this series of videos, I want to focus on what people are actually telling me, with a tiny bit of analysis thrown in, but mostly focused on the variety of information that I've been giving and a little bit about what I'm thinking about it. And each one of these is going to be themed on a particular topic that is coming up in the book. I'm not going to be covering everything that's covered in that theme because this would be a very, very long video otherwise. And it's also not going to cover every single theme just because of time, but I'm going to do my best to summarize some of the ideas that I've been thinking about and some of the stuff that I think is really interesting. So yeah, I hope that you also find it interesting. But before we get into all of those varieties of topics and themes and ideas, what I would like to do first is to spend this video talking a little bit about the interview process and how I sort through that information. So in a previous video, which I will again link in the description below, and you can also find it on this channel, I did a little bit of just an information about how I do interviews. So that episode really focused on how I structure them, or more importantly, how I don't structure them, why I choose to do things that way. And there's also a lot of kind of that somewhat boring but very, very important data and how I save data and anonymize data and all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't really get into how I analyze the work afterwards. So what happens post-interview. So I thought in this one I'd talk a little bit about what I did post-interview, so that way in the future episodes when we're actually getting through the themes, you can kind of see at least a little bit of what I did to go from interview to getting that information, which means that if you watch everything, then that means that you have the entire process of interviewing and how that all worked. So as I mentioned in the previous video, most of my recordings happened via Zoom for a multitude of reasons. And that meant that I was able to record them fairly easily. So I recorded them via Zoom through a cloud recording or directly onto my computer. It depended on kind of what my tech setup was feeling like at that day of which one I was doing. Basically, as soon as I got the recording like fully on my computer, I renamed every single type of file and element of the file to the anonymized name that I'm using for the individual, so their name wasn't associated with it on any of the file information. And then I deleted the recording that Zoom had provided. So if it was on the cloud, I deleted it, and if it was just saved to my computer, then I just renamed the whole file. I did this just so that way everywhere that someone would look, it would be the anonymized name. And I was trying really hard to make sure that no matter what, there wasn't as much tied to the normal name. I know that probably the ones that I recorded on cloud, there's probably some trace of it somewhere. But I did my best to try to clean it up as much as I possibly could. Once I had the recording, I use an AI transcription service. So I was using Otter AI, which I mean, I've heard people say that they really like. I really disliked it. It didn't hear a lot of things the same, and because most of what I was talking about were like anime names and character names, and the word cosplay was also often transcribed as CAUSE space play, which was kind of frustrating when that's everything that we're talking about. So I found it a little bit annoying because of that. However, it wasn't too bad, and it got the gist of kind of everything. Once I had that Word document of the transcription, that's when I started doing a more in-depth reading and kind of quote grab, for lack of a better word. I've been saying analyzing it, but that's because I would only sometimes kind of make notes as I went. But I actually used Notion for this because I use Notion for everything in my life. But I have a Notion page saved up for my book. And as part of that page, I have a section on all of my interviews. I was keeping track of the anonymized name that I had and whether or not I had transcribed it, whether or not I had analyzed it yet, where those people were from, what their genders were, information like that, which I will not show you. But I had all that information just so I could keep track of how many of what I had, because I wanted to make sure that I had a good representation of everybody. So, for example, I was going through them at one point and realized, because I was like, oh, I should probably mark out who these people's genders are. And I was thinking so I could make sure that I had representation from LGBT people. But then as I was going through it, realized that I had no one who identified as male. Nobody who identified as male I had interviewed. So I did a re-send out for a call, and I now have male cosplayers that I've spoken to. So it meant that I got to re-establish a lot of things. I had previously spoken to disabled cosplayers, but we didn't spend a lot of time talking about their disability and how that affects their cosplay. So I did that as well. So that way I could make sure that I had those groups represented, for example. But then I have a separate kind of database that is the various themes for the book, and it's just the interviews. So I have each person's anonymized name as like a heading, and then under it is a toggle. And in that toggle, I have a kind of brief summary of what it is that someone said about that particular theme, and then under the toggle I copy and paste the direct quote from the transcription. Now most of the time I haven't actually gone through and re-edited the transcription in order to read the way I want. Most of the time because the thing with AI transcriptions is that it might look like a jumbled mess when you're reading it, but if you start reading it out loud, you go, oh, okay, I get what they're saying. So I normally kept it the same just because it cut down on my work. And then if I wanted to directly quote it in the actual writing later on as I was writing it up, if I wanted to directly quote it and I didn't know what they were saying, then I would go back and listen to the recording and transcribe what it is that they said. Basically, what this means is that while I am actually writing the various chapters that are talking about these different themes, I can then grab, oh, this person said this person said this person said this thing, because a lot of people, the thing that is really fascinating, and you'll find this out as I go through this, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, was because there are two things that are really fascinating about doing this and looking through these transcriptions. And this is across the board, no matter what it is that you're studying. When you talk to a load of different people from completely different backgrounds, from different kind of circles and cliques within the cosplay community, and you're talking to all of them, there are two things that can be really fascinating. One is when you ask a question and you get completely different answers from every single person. And the second one is when you ask a question and you get the same exact answer from every single one of them. So by keeping track of who's saying what, then I can keep track also of how much are people agreeing on these particular subjects and how much are people disagreeing on the particular subjects. And it means that when I'm writing, I can kind of pit people against each other, because my opinion is not what matters in this. It's the opinion of the cosplayers. And so when there is an argument, instead of me playing a devil's advocate, I have a person that is understanding that and comes from those basics and ideas. I don't have to play the devil's advocate for it. I have a person. I have somebody that I can quote and say, oh, well, Sam said this. And in contrast, Riley said this thing, and that is against Sam. And it shows that there is disagreements in the cosplay community without me having to just say that there are disagreements about something. So that's just a really quick rundown of the process, just so that way you can have a better understanding of how I'm getting from point A to point B in the process. So you know the behind the scenes of how I went from absolutely no information to having loads of information. So in the future episodes of this, I'm actually going to be going through some of the primary themes. I'm going to pull out some of the elements of what people were saying. Most of them are going to be gists. I don't know if I'm going to directly quote too much, but I'm going to try to do my best to present to you what it is that people were saying and some of the arguments that people were having and some of the disagreements people were having, but also what everyone was agreeing on. I think that's also something that's really lovely, and something that I want to capture as well. So I hope that helps to elucidate what it is that's happening here, and I will see you in the next video.